and we are back with Simulation Nation Season 4. And I am back, had my baby, so now we are back in action here, ready to do some interviews and talk all things simulation. So this episode, we interviewed Jarrod Young at CHIPS, University of Tennessee, and we talked Memphis, and we talked a lot about kind of the teamwork and the different roles that went into simulation. And honestly, he is just a wealth of knowledge in terms of all of the different accomplishments and things that he's done. He's super involved with SSH. He's been on the board. He's gone through their fellowship. He was one of the very first people to go through and get the CHSOSA, so that advanced level. But again, he is just
on the Accreditation Council.
On the Accreditation Council, doing that for other institutions. So in terms of his knowledge of simulation, it is just so well-rounded. And I think that that's unique because a lot of times we're seeing it as people with clinician backgrounds or, again, kind of come from that sim education world and then move into it, where I feel like for him, he's really been rooted in operations, but then has gone forward and done, kind of the full gamut in terms of looking at the simulation center. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think that has to do with the legacy of Chad Epps and Teresa Britt that started CHIPS. They really set it up to, empower everybody evenly and to encourage leadership skills in everybody. So, again, I think Jarrod in the interview mentions that he kind of feels compelled to take that legacy forward. Yeah. And so it's really nice to see people that are not necessarily healthcare education oriented rise into leadership positions because it's a different voice, it's a different brain that's using this, and again, you'll hear lots of really cool stuff that he's done and a really unique perspective, I think, on the simulation world.
Please enjoy this interview with Jarrod Young.
Season 4 of the Simulation Nation podcast, and this season I have Megan back with me.
Yes.
She has had a baby and took a little bit of time off, so last year I was doing it solo, but welcome back, Megan. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Today we have Jarrod Young with us from CHIPS, and I'm going to let him give the acronym, but I think it's the Center for Interprofessional Healthcare Simulation.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Slide the healthcare in there, yeah.
Right. I'm missing the H. So CHIPS is a place that Avkin visited a lot early on as it was just kind of unveiling and unrolling, and it is a sight to behold. Their sim center is amazing. I think that, Jarrod, you probably would consider yourself blessed to be able to work in such an amazing space.
For sure. Amy, Megan, it's great to be with y'all. Excited to be here representing CHIPS. Again, we're incredibly fortunate. We deal with the same issues everybody else does in simulation. So it's nice to always remember how lucky we are to be in such a great physical space and be surrounded with such a great team. I think that's the biggest piece of it, but excited to chat more about that today and about the other topics we're talking about.
So I really come at this from an educator perspective, simulation. And the operations side of things was really kind of different. Like in the beginning, I was doing everything, right? When we hired someone for the operations portion of it, or at least a part of the operations portion of it, later on, after several years. So could you explain to those of us educators that don't have the benefit of having someone in operations, all of the amazing things that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you look at it with that educator hat, right, the operations people get to do all the pieces that I think keep the educators up at night, right? So much of simulation was founded out of somebody's desire, interest in building this incredibly hands-on, immersive, active learning environment. That meant that people were having to go outside of their faculty roles, their current responsibilities, stay up late at night, stay late after they should be leaving to go home and set up the events, prepare for keeping technology up, doing the maintenance piece. Operations allows that magic to just happen so that when the faculty shows up for their events, it's all done. So really for us, it's making sure we understand the importance of the technology, understand how to run it, to be able to maintain it as another piece of that. But then showing the expertise and the ability to show how the technology fits into that educational platform. It's wonderful to have the most cutting edge piece of technology, but if you don't know how to best apply it to the educational methodology, the objectives of the case, and that everybody's not pulling in the same direction, then it's all for naught anyway. So, really kind of building on the importance of that side of it, that it's more than just somebody setting up the equipment, it's somebody really knowing the ins and outs of that and how it affects the educational side of things.
Yeah.
I would 100% agree with that. And I always joked because when we finally did hire a sim tech to do what the operations portion of it, whenever anything wouldn't work, like our AV system was down, notoriously at the beginning of every semester it was a problem. But whenever she would come in the room and start humming, I knew that my nervous energy was really
Projecting.
it was just projecting onto her. And so she was just like zoning me out because I probably was like a flapping chicken running around trying to get things fixed. But I fully appreciate what they do. But I think the idea of having someone on the operations side is a luxury for many people in the simulation world. So I know obviously Chips really, adopted that and brought you in to kind of get started with things. How did you get from your biomedical engineering background into simulation? Like what brought you there?
It's a great question. I think, Amy, like so many of us in simulation, you just kind of stumble upon it,
Yeah.
and you find that it suits you and you're interested in it. I think for me, I've always been kind of a fast paced, kind of go getter personality. Again, biomedical engineering is my background. I graduated from the University of Alabama in Birmingham, knew I wanted to get back there and wanted to be a little more aligned with the clinical side of my engineering role. I was working for a wonderful program, the Alabama Department of Rehabilitation Services, with a wonderful mission to be able to support people with disabilities, finding engineering initiatives, technology initiatives to be able to help them go to school, go to work, be able to support on that side of things. But knew that there was more I wanted to be able to kind of move forward and do. And so through a friend of mine, it was actually my wife's sorority sister at the time, the long connection of it, her brother-in-law worked in simulation and they knew they had an opening coming up. They liked the fact that I was a biomedical engineer and it was just a waiting game. And then I got a call from an incredibly wonderful person who served as my mentor for a long time in Chad Epps. And that was like the perfect match to be able to continue to push me forward in this field.
So what was that like in terms of kind of like a day in day out working with Chad and Teresa in terms of like just kind of what that was like? Because I just think that the few times that we visited Chips and met with them, it's just like they were just a powerhouse in terms of, again, their connection. It seemed just like they really complemented each other in terms of what that looked like. So I'm just curious to hear from you kind of what was that perspective of being able to kind of learn under, I guess, like giants in the space of coming in and working under these incredible people.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving into a role as the operations lead at the time here at a growing center in Chips, it was really kind of coming on. I knew that Chad was, again, this giant in the field, was currently the president for SSH at the time. And then got to meet Teresa and really see how much of a quiet giant she was here, but also in the field, was so driven by what she knows. And we talk about it still all the time now. She has read more articles and learned more on simulation education and forgotten it than I'll ever know. And so I think it was amazing to learn from her. And I think my young, youthful drive to push forward, and then her ability to kind of say, let's think about this, really was a great yin and yang as we balanced and move forward. Because I think, I've even been there to kind of help continue to push her forward and say, hey, you've got a lot here. Continue to get your name out there. And she's been instrumental for all of us here. And same with Chad. Like what they were able to build here has us still in place where we are today, and really able to continue to push the field forward. And that's all we can ask for.
You can definitely see his fingerprints all over it.
Yeah.
Both of their fingerprints all
Well,
over it.
and I think that that's what's cool too, is I do think that, again, in the times of seeing them, again, very briefly, but it was that Chad was kind of that one to always propel it forward. And I do feel like Teresa was always the one to pull it back. And when you have that respectful relationship where both can appreciate one another and what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are, then I think that that's really what creates such cool sim, because it's also the ability to just really complement each other and build legacy is honestly what I see it as, is they're able to really kind of, again, him being the president and having such an influence, but then also being able to actually be doing this day in and day out. I just think it's a really cool collaboration to see between them.
Yeah, we joke all the time. Teresa was like the mother of our sim group here, but really, I mean, they set this culture of this team dynamic and us pushing forward, and that still continues today with our team. We're so supportive of everybody, and it's really helped us work collaboratively and try to break down some of those silos that do exist and really want the best for everybody. So they've done a fantastic job putting their fingerprints all over the program that's still here today.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So CHIPS was opened officially in 2018, is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. And one of the big, one of the parts of that acronym is interprofessional. And I obviously early on you guys bought some Avcon products. We remember visiting and helping, trying to help get started with integration and things along those lines. And so I just wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you manage such a big it's like 8 different programs that you guys do simulation with. How do you manage single discipline simulation, interprofessional simulation? Like, how does all of that work? I mean, I know obviously schedules, organization, all of those things, but how intentional is the interprofessional simulation? And for those programs that are struggling, that are even maybe a bit smaller, what advice would you give them on, running interprofessional simulation in a way that doesn't cause frustration from every discipline that's there?
Yeah. I would love to sit here and say that we have it all figured out, but we don't. But we can help people move forward. I mean, I think the trouble sometimes is like when you open up a sim center or you push forward for IPE, people just expect that that's going to happen tomorrow or next month, and that's not the case. Like so much of this well-developed interprofessional simulation and education is months or sometimes years in the making. And so I think for us, like we're in a sweet spot where we're really kind of a standalone between any one department or program. We're really a teacher's best friend and best resource here on campus. So we work in conjunction with faculty. So as they see needs come up in their curriculum, we're always working as the simulation experts to help design their cases, help be able to, again, support the technical initiatives that they need. And so a lot of times we'll always suggest IPE. So if somebody comes forward and says, hey, we're struggling with this, because we are that centralized support, we can say, well, hey, we know that nursing is working on this piece of it, or our PA program's working on this, or medicine. And so we try to find those intersections where we can. It's so much of bringing everybody to the table on the front end, having that strong leadership, having a strong process in place to be able to pull everybody forward. And I think the biggest piece is, unfortunately, people say, hey, we want to do this. Let's throw nursing in. Let's throw medicine in. Let's throw PA in. And that's not interprofessional simulation. Having people at that front end of the design and having everybody have that seat at the table is the most important piece. And I think that's where so many people get it wrong initially, is like you can't come in the bottom of the ninth and throw somebody into it. Like everybody has to be there so that they are able to design the sim for their learners in mind, because although we have a team dynamic and aspect, we still do have profession specific objectives that we want to hit within that team design. So making sure that everybody feels their needs are met.
Yeah, that's really good advice.
Yeah. How do you run through that from kind of a start to finish situation of having someone come to you guys with an idea or a gap that they're seeing, in terms of you and your team kind of working through that to kind of get to the end result of like the day of simulation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, because we sit outside of any college, we're unique in that we may get a request from our College of Dentistry the same day that we get a request from our College of Medicine. So really a lot of what we've done has been so that everybody has that same equal footing, and that the size of your program does not give you some higher level access
Yeah,
to
the
our
trump card,
program.
right? Yeah.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
We don't want that. And so it's us setting those processes in place. And so for us, it was even leaning back to what we were looking at before we were ever accredited, trying to get to the point that we were going to be SSH accredited as a program. So we were designing with the end in mind, but thinking through all of our stakeholders. And so for us, we schedule on a two-part system, a two-semester system. So we're actually coming up to our semester deadline here in the middle of April. That will be for all simulation events, July 1 through the end of the year. And so that gives everybody a one time that you get your request in at that point. And then I've got one part of my team that are our simulation logisticians that are amazing. They make the calendar flow. They get all of it scheduled. They send the confirmations out. They deal with all of our prioritization when we do run up with our inevitable conflicts now. And then once that's set, then it kicks over to Jamie Pitt, who's our director of education now, and she manages all the sim design. So we're, usually 3 to even 5 months out if it's a brand new SP sim and design. If we're looking at a mannequin based simulation, you're 2 to 3 months. If you're looking at just setting up a procedural task trainer type event, maybe 1 to 2 months, just dependent upon time. And all that is set. And it was painstaking years and years of getting a culture norm and a shift. But we've seen incredible results in the back end, that we're not rushing simulations out, that we're not seeing negative learner impacts, and that we're making sure that we design it with everybody, that holistic approach of the learner's needs are going to be met, the faculty's needs are going to be met, the simulation team's needs are met, and including in that our standardized and simulated patients, making sure that everybody's needs are met. So it was a lot of policy, a lot of process, a lot of our team thinking and designing it. And then I think for about a year or two, I got deemed the title of Dr. No here because I had to hold a strong line. I think out of that, we've gotten to a culture where people have a better understanding of it. But it's hard being the person to always hold to that standard process or procedure.
Megan was the Dr. No when we were
Yeah.
at the university.
I was as well.
It's hard. It wears on you, but somebody has to be. Somebody has to be. So.
When you were saying an April deadline for anything from July to the end of the year, I'm like, oh my gosh,
And
I can't
I'm
imagine.
like, absolutely, 100%. That's what it is, and you hold that deadline.
Well, and we had it's
I'm
funny.
an ER nurse, so fly by the seat of your pants, you know.
You work in a constant state of just craziness.
Turmoil.
It's
And I try to make everybody else that way too, I think.
right. It's the gif of the dog sitting surrounded by fire. Like, this is fine. It's all fine. But it's funny. It's changed so much. Like, I kind of took on that role of like the logistician and setting the schedule. Then that turned into a full-time person taking that position. She grew it so much that now we have 2 individuals over it. And so now we're even thinking, how does it grow further? So we always find ways to continue to better our process and to find other things we need to do.
And I think that's great to point out too, just in terms of the policy and procedure and how that took time to, again, as a culture develop. But I think that I talk to a lot of people who see it as, oh, these big centers, or again, doing a lot of good sim, it just kind of happens organically, or it happens with a lot of money, or it happens with a lot of support. But I do think that there's so much of it that it's like, it's a beautiful crafted dance, but it is a training, it is a process, it is we all come together and figure out how it's going to go. It doesn't just happen, right? And I do think that I emphasize that a lot with any consulting that I've done for programs, is that you still have to have policy and procedure. You still have to have your baselines of what you're going to do, because just because you get more hires and just because you get more money doesn't mean that all of the sudden all the pieces are just going to come together. But I think that it's interesting to hear you say kind of over time it developed, because I think a lot of times people don't want to let it simmer. They don't want to let that all happen, but it's something that you just have to let it go and just continue to do little corrections every semester to make it better.
Yeah,
to make
I
sure it runs
love I
smoothly.
love the visual, Megan, that you mentioned of like the beautifully crafted dance because it is. I mean, you could have all the money and you're still not going to fix your problems. You could have all the staff and it's still not going to fix your problems. It's a buy-in from leadership. It's money. It's facilities. It's support and professional development for your staff, education for your staff, policies, procedures, governance for your program. It's all these things that go together and then you could know all the right dance steps, but there's this connection and chemistry that you have to have with your partner for it to even work. And so like it all has to blend together in the right mix. And we've been lucky to piece a lot of those together. And it takes time, but then every day you got to keep working forward to like chipping away and getting another 1% better or putting one policy down and like, let's see how it works. And we'll revisit it in a month if we need to tweak it. Then 2 years, 3 years goes by, and you've got this wonderful foundation and program that you've built.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also goes back to what you mentioned earlier with the culture that was set originally from Chad and Teresa of a mutual respect and everyone coming to the table. And again, no one is able to kind of dominate another department based off of size and things like that. But I think that that's also something that I often can see is missing in other programs where there may not be that same mutual respect, or especially in an interprofessional setting, people can come in with previous biases based off different areas and again kind of be rubbed a little bit the wrong way. So that can make it even harder to go through IPE simulation if there already are some, bias from previous practice. But I think when you can come together and almost have what you guys have in terms of that kind of, I almost see it as like the central brain that's kind of taking in all of the requests, working through it all, but you guys are able to kind of really filter it out. And I mean, to me, it reminds me of like Disney World. It's like we bring the magic and we put it on. You know what I mean? It's like we're going to put the performance on and do all the stuff in the background and make it be able to happen.
But I think it's also from my perspective. First of all, you've given me so I'm a part of the AWISH program. So it's the interassociational where SSH and Axel and ASPE are all working together to get these workforce development SimOps titles identified, SP educator and SP, and then now you've identified a logistician, and I'm like, that's a whole nother.
Add that in.
Add that one to the group, right?
Yeah.
But amazing that you have that opportunity. But I also think when there's imbalance in power dynamics, I think healthcare providers, at least my world, and I probably should speak specifically to people, but by and large, it's kind of tyranny of the urgent. So it's like, hey, let's just patch this together. Let's throw it together. But when you have this policies and procedures, when you have SimOps in place saying, that's not the way to do this well, and you have someone to help guide and direct that, I think that that's what really leads to the outcomes that you're looking for, and it slows things down just a bit.
Yeah.
I think that we always are like, oh, we're having a problem with this in clinical. Let's fix it with let's just do this, rather than like, no, wait, let's meet, let's talk. Should this be an interprofessional sim? Let's go through the process of, establishing a new simulation. So I do think that there is something to be said for that. And I will say that Chad was amazing in the fact that there was never a power imbalance between him and even with Jarrod, working with you. He just was always on the same level as everybody else and just wanted to hear and respond to that. So I think that is a good first start, definitely for CHIPS.
Yeah, I mean, we always talk about. I mean, it's really a flat hierarchy. I mean, there always has to be a hierarchy on paper, and that makes sense. And so, he really set that tone, and he wanted the buy-in, right? Like he was at the time kind of the giant, the go-to person that everybody looked to, especially as we were building it out. Like we've been incredibly lucky. Before I even got here in 2016 at UT, they had been working 2, 3, maybe even 4 years of bringing in stakeholders and really planning and designing what this would look like. While, to your point, Amy, like simulation was still going on, so they weren't trying to just patch things at the time. Like there's some small patches, but then they were planning this long term plan. Bring in a great builder, a great planner in Chad, and I think his biggest strength was not the knowledge he had in the field, but his ability to support others in their role and build them up and have them challenge what they know, continue to build it and move it forward. And, without that, we would not have been successful, after him leaving. We were able to continue to kind of piece it together. We've gone through leadership changes at a high level at our university. We've gone through leadership changes in our program. And we've been really lucky to have great leaders, and still to this day do, but we wouldn't have been able to support that time had he not built that into an entire team of trying to be the best version of yourself in your role, and lead from where you are, and the leadership not just being held with one person.
So you mentioned Jamie, who's now the director of education at CHIPS, correct? And I know she started off as your SP educator fairly early on. And recently you guys went through the human simulation accreditation through SSH, so like a pilot, right? You were one of the pilot groups. Do you mind giving us a little quick peek behind the curtain of what that was like, and what was different about that than, let's say, the general accreditation that people would go through?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, this has been something that even predates my joining the SSH Accreditation Council, but something that was kind of always kind of churning in the background, and just being able to continue to kind of move forward. It was a good time. I'm always a go-getter and doer, so when the ideas come up, like let's approach it. I've been incredibly fortunate to work with Jamie. Before I got here at CHIPS, had never been close enough to a SP program that I ever was able to see it firsthand. My original program, it was separate. So I've learned everything that I've learned from Jamie. And so that has been an incredible wealth to have her here and be able to kind of understand and see. And we've had a lot of conversations over time, especially as she was getting ready to move forward into the director role of, she had never done mannequin sim and procedural sim and all this. And I told her, I mean, just my opinion alone, like, when you've had to design and develop sim with another human in mind, it makes it much easier, because that mannequin's not going to tell you or respond that they're frustrated, that they're stressed, they're overwhelmed, that there's too much to learn.
They
Like,
know the answer to a question.
you push that button and they'll come right back on the next day and they're at 100%, provided you charge the battery. But there are not these other factors in play. And so I said, you've already had to think from another level to be able to do that. And so really for us, from the SSH side, as we looked at piloting and bringing these standards forward, it was not an accreditation of a modality, but it was rather an importance of capturing the program level importance of being able to support this initiative. Within SP education and human simulation, there is a wealth of consideration, policies and procedures, training of your standardized patients, being able to help keep them equipped and developed, having them de-roll, de-escalate. There's so many nuances that these incredible educators and the people that run standardized patient programs have to go through, that is just not the same as a mannequin-based simulation program. And that doesn't belittle the work that a mannequin program would go through. It just wants to shed light on the importance and the differences of that side of simulation methodology. And so if we're going to be looking at a full program accreditation, there was enough specialized work within this field that it felt right to figure out, how do we continue to work and move forward to bring to light the great programs and the great people that are putting on these educational efforts. And so we were lucky to be able to be one of the first pilots to go through to continue to kind of chart and set the standards. We've been able to continue to revitalize. I think we're now to a fourth version of our standards. We're going through a pilot with 5 or 6 more programs this spring, with every plan to have this open to other programs to apply by July. So again, it really just focuses on that full holistic program approach to what it takes to be able to support, from the initial ask of a faculty to you implementing and then going through the data and quality improvement of putting on SP education events.
Yeah, and what I would say there, one of the biggest things that I learned when we went through just the initial accreditation at our center is the beauty in going through this is that you get support from experts in the industry to say these are the things that you could do to improve your program. So if you need to make a case to your leadership, if you need to make a case to your donors or things along those lines of these are the things that we could do to make even simulation even better, you get that support, right? You have a pair of objective eyes or several eyes looking at what you're doing and saying, how can we support you? I can remember Penny Watts saying that to us, like, how can we support you at doing what you're doing better, right? What are the things that we can advocate to help you with? Because as a simulationist, you're the ones that are in the trenches. Oh man, we could really use another SimOps person or something along those lines, right? And so I think that rather than to see it kind of as something that would make you nervous, it is lifting the covers and looking underneath, but it is doing it in a way that is supporting the program to improve what they're doing, what the amazing work that they're already doing, but to make it even better, right? I think that was to me the biggest takeaway is I was like, wow, you're here to help me, not just like evaluate what we're doing. You're here to help.
Yeah.
So I do think that's amazing.
I'm glad you said that, Amy, because I do. I think, there's so many times people think that your program has to be a certain size. You have to be a mega center to be able to go forward and be accredited. That's just not the case. They think that you have to have every single problem and anything, all issues solved. That's not the case, right? Like we're looking to make sure that you've got a great foundation, that you are working towards a set of plans, procedures, policies for how you operate and manage your program. But it's okay to not be perfect. There is no perfect program out there. And like you said, the great part of it is you get these outside voices to be able to come in and say, this is an amazing thing you're doing. You should go share this at IMSH, at SimGhost, at ASPE, at Anaxel. Or, hey, I see where you're going. I've been there 5 years ago. Let me tell you ways that I've been able to help overcome that struggle. Or to your point, Amy, like you can go to the institutional leadership and just be that outside voice to say everything that they're saying is correct. Like you need to be able to continue to support and build that forward. And so through the Accreditation Council, the last few years, we worked on a perceived return on investment of SSH accreditation, really trying to focus on some of those great stories and some of the great wins that programs have had as they move forward through accreditation, and just really focus on getting that out there and helping people know, like, yes, it is that you're meeting a mark and that you have a great program, but it also is a way to help continue to push you forward and make you better.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, and I really appreciate with the human simulation accreditation side where, again, being in simulation from, 2015, it's just like there was never any rules for anything, right? It was like everyone was just doing whatever they could do with what made sense. And then as time has gone on, we've gotten standards, we've gotten accreditation, we've got credentialing, like all of these things have developed over time. But it does start to give some boundaries and some rules around why we do the things we do. Because I feel like with the standardized patient side of things, for so long we were taking from theater. It was like, okay, well, this is what theater does. Theater does de-rolling. So we're going to start to implement de-rolling. Okay, theater does dress rehearsals. We're going to start doing dress rehearsals. Like we were always kind of pulling from that world. And I really appreciate that now inside of simulation, we're kind of starting to own some of these procedures, policies, things like that theater has been doing, but then crafting them because it's different. I say all the time that it's like just because you're an actor doesn't mean you're a standardized patient. And just because you're a standardized patient doesn't mean you're an actor. They're two different worlds with two different expectations. I remember early on when we were working closely with theater and they were like referring to simulation as in like, and then the standardized patient gets up and takes a bow at the end of the simulation for the audience. It's like, no, it's very different. That's not what we're doing here. Like we're not doing it for the round of applause. We're not doing it for the laughter. We're doing it for the education content. And it's like, and so I feel like now being able to have some sort of set, I guess like accreditation to be able to send people through or kind of as a reference guide, it's also helpful to make it so that you're starting to validate some of these concepts of what we've been doing to say, well, no, you can go back to that. You can look at that. This is why, this is how, things along those lines. And it kind of just, again, just further validates the work that goes into when you're using an SP inside a simulation.
Yeah, and I would go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Are you sure? I think there's been incredible work done through the ASPE standards of best practice, the Anaxel healthcare simulation standards of best practice that really hone in on the educational methodology and the delivery of how we do simulation. What I really love about accreditation, and this may even be my own bias because I'm not an educator or a clinician by training, but I love the full program approach, where we should all strive to bring on the ASPE, the Anaxel, whatever standards of best practice in the education that we deliver. But for me, accreditation, it pulls the full team in how you manage, and you're able to kind of validate how that educational opportunity unfolds in front of the learners there, how you support it from a full picture. And it really, I think, again, as somebody that came up through operations, it brings to light the importance of a full team, right? Back to where Amy even started with this earlier of, your STEM techs, your AV specialists, they all play this important role, and they may not be front stage, but they are that stage manager, that stage hand that makes sure that the spotlight shines on the star at the right moment, right? Or that makes sure that the audio kicks on at the right time. So it's the appreciation of how we all fit into this. And at the end of the day, it's about providing the best educational outcome for the learners that come through so that they can support us or our families in the worst time that we would have, right? We want to be able to have that comfort that we're going to be taken care of to the best of providers' ability.
Absolutely. Would you mind talking a little bit about the SSH Fellowship? I know you were a fellow, what, in 2023? Is that right?
I'll take
Did
your
you go through
word for it. That sounds like the right year.
I think that's what I read. But do you want to talk a little bit about who should apply for the SSH Fellowship? I went through the National League for Nursing Sim Leadership Group, and that was life changing for me, both personally and professionally. But a little bit of again, I've never been an SSH Fellow, but could you talk a little bit about your experience with that?
It's been great. I think, I was lucky. I think in 2023, we had four, maybe even five different, what I would call operations people that built their careers and came up through simulation operations. So I think in a lot of ways, that was kind of somewhat of a changing of the guard at times, right? Like it may seem like this kind of, group that maybe one would never think they could aspire to. But I think from being on that side of it, the people that I've run into, all the other fellows, are they're so generous with their time. They want to share their experiences with people, and I think it's been able to show over the last few years that it's there for anybody that is a simulationist. It's there for the people that aspire to continue to push this field forward. And just like all of us in simulation, we come from different backgrounds. We all specialize in different things. We push the field forward in different ways. And I love that it's an appreciation of the varied backgrounds, the varied experience that people have. But it really just exists for the people that are doing great work, making great change, and continue to want to do that, right? Like it's not some hall of fame, you put your plaque up there, but it's a recognition of wanting to continue to pass that baton on. And I think for me, I've always, again, been driven by getting to be front row firsthand to see how Chad was continuing to operate and move forward. And so, in some ways, it felt like, hey, I want to continue to do that for other people. I want to be able to continue to push and drive forward, but to bring others along with me, to mentor, to support, to have Zoom calls with people that ask questions, to share as much as I can. So I just love the ability now that there's so many fellows that we're looking at doing these master's courses and doing these couch sessions and being able for people to really share their experiences. Like the world of podcasting here, like Simulation Nation, has been incredibly helpful because it brings some of these figures that we may be afraid to approach, not including me. I am not that person, but some of these other people that may be tough to ever walk up to, you can bring them into listening or being able to see them on the screen, and it gives a little more confidence to approach people and know that this is a really small community full of people that want to help and want to share their experiences with other people.
Absolutely.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I feel like we talk about that a lot too, where it's just we've run into so many people. So in the early days of Avkin, we did a lot of workshops of kind of just going around doing presentations, going to the next school doing presentations, and along our journeys, it was just that we met so many different people, and people like Susie Carden Egren, and running and working with Kim Leeton and Teresa Gore, and just all these different people that again were just so pivotal in the early days of just pioneering the field. And I do feel like a lot of times with people who are getting started, they can get intimidated by different names of schools, people like UMass and things along those lines, right? It feels intimidating to go up, but I think that just every time we've ever had experiences, people are just so giving inside of the simulation community, and giving of their time, giving of their expertise. And there really has never been, I don't think anyone we've come across that isn't just fantastic in terms of them just being like, let's sit down, let's chat, let's, talk shop, really.
Yeah, it still tears me up a little bit when I start talking about it, because from my perspective, I was getting my master's degree and I was quoting these people over and over again: Barry Eisenberg, Susie Carden Egren, all these people that were, Kim Leeton, and then like you meet them and they're people and they just want to talk to you, and I always tell our sales team, if you read an article and you're impressed by what they said, email the author and tell them that you appreciate their work, because it is their life's passion for them to do it. So, getting an email from somebody saying, hey, I love what you're doing, I'm really interested, that's an honor to us. It's not, you're not bothering, people that have done that. And I think that the simulation community is very unique in that, about how giving they are. I will say that.
I agree with you. And I think it's funny, all the names that you throw out are people that I've done the same thing. Like the fact that I get to, when I was on the board last year, sat next to Kim Leeton, and it's like, whoa, this is awesome. Like, let's work on a project together. From being there, I've been able to have even just one-on-one discussions with Barry Eisenberg, and every time that he gives me a moment of his time, I'm like, thank you so much. But to your point, these people, correct. I've worked with so many great people. Like, I've worked directly with Penny Watts as well. Like, I've seen so many of these people. I've been able to go and be able to support the efforts of Susie Carden Egren through MGH and some of the work that, like, I just always, I think my biggest thing for the people out there that are, how do I get there? How do I get to fellowship? How do I meet these people? Just say yes. Like, I had no idea, and maybe it was overconfidence, maybe it was just a lack of no. I just said yes. I volunteered for everything. Some things I got turned down for, and that's okay. But just say yes, volunteer, do great work. To Amy's point, show appreciation and what you learn from it, and more often than not, people are going to be incredibly receptive, and potentially even ask you to help on their next papers or projects, or ask you for ideas.
Yeah. And I think that sometimes there can be kind of an imposter syndrome when you don't have that clinical background or necessarily like come from that world. Because I know I felt that way of coming in, and it's like, no, I'm the standardized patient person, like I'm not the sim person, I'm not the educator, I'm not the clinical person, right? But like you were saying earlier, it's like, but I'm still a valuable part in this moving the industry forward, right? I'm a unique voice. And for me specifically, it's hard because, my background was I was the standardized patient. I wasn't the standardized patient educator. I was the actual patient. And so having someone who was actually the standardized patient staying in the field consistently, and again, making it their life's work, that's not super common. So I remember for me, even going into, going up for my Chessie, I had to like write in and be like, hey, I don't have a background in this. I'm the standardized patient educator. Like, is this right? And again, it was kind of one of those like, absolutely, we'd love to have you still fill this out. We'll go through this process. But again, I also want to encourage anyone who's listening who is on the operation side or the standardized patient side or the logistics side or whatever it is, you can still be super involved in this world. You just have to keep coming forward. And like you said, I've really never faced a lot of rejection in terms of people being like, no, that's not you, right? I think that there is such a mutual respect in this world, and people want to bring in different people from different areas. So again, if you are questioning if you belong based off your background, just know that if you're passionate about sim and you want to get involved, more than likely people are going to wrap their arms around you and bring you in, and you're just going to be part of the group just like everybody else.
Join SimGhost, join ASPE. They will find a committee for you to be on, for sure.
Yes, yeah. And I think it is. It's taking leadership, ownership role from whatever role you're in, and then continuing to learn about other roles as well. I think it's funny you said that, Megan. Like, we, as an SP coming forward, I think we've probably had 5 or 6 SPs we have now hired on into full roles because it's an interesting peek behind the curtain into a world that most people don't know exists. And so we've hired standardized patients on as our logistician. We've hired them on as our SP educators. We've hired them on in operations roles. We've moved people from within operations to education to logistics to educate. Like, we've moved people around so much because it's we always look for just really an attitude and ability to fit in, to grow, to learn, to want to know more. And then if you have people that have that hunger and that desire, again, the information, the people, the resources are out there. If you join up and become a member of these societies, there's so much information out there to be able to learn that you find where your role is or where you best fit, and you can really move forward and be honestly whoever you want within simulation. Yeah, that's a really loaded question. Everybody always asks, and um, I really do. I think I'll try to be as simple with it as I can, but I always get very long-winded. So I really think over the next 10 years, especially operations specifically, it's continuing to lean on the different backgrounds and expertise levels that people bring in. We've got this great approach for handling the equipment, the mannequins, the tech side of things, and that's great. That's wonderful. Bringing those people forward even more now into the educational design piece of this, right? Like designing our simulations with the capabilities of the mannequin, the technology to make the most holistic, well rounded approach to a simulation. But to me, the next 10 years is how do we get outside of our little bubble of simulation and we get into the real world? Because that's where the biggest push is going to come and where we can make the biggest impact. So to me, it's whether it's operations, whether it's building up this logistical side, the administration side of it, it's building up the business side, being able to take data and analytics that we have and make our use case pitch. Because we know, unfortunately, as important as simulation is, it is a every 5 to 7 years another investment in capital, in the equipment, the resources that keep coming up. And for some places, that's hard to really be able to see and to be able to grasp. But if we can take, yes, it's this cost, but here's our impact, here's the downstream impact, here's what it does to true patient care and safety and quality in a hospital. That's the impact that we have to get. We have to be able to get to the people within business, the people that have their hands on the wallet, on the purse strings of a program, to really be able to continue to support it. I mean, I think there's been great work done the last few years through all of the submissions through Simulation in Healthcare Journal and all the other journals that are out there of the research people are doing. Again, SSH Accreditation has the systems integration arm where it really looks at simulation integrated to within a hospital's quality and risk management and safety department. Some of those tangible data metrics coming out that is doing what we know, tying the educational piece to the downstream effects of what we're doing is important because so many times people are like, well, I'm just in, an academic center. I can't really see, does this impact or not? Yes, you can. You can tangibly make those connections by the people that are implementing this with the current practitioners, current clinicians, seeing this immediate impact at the bedside or in their, quality offices, reduction of any medical errors, whatever they're tying it to, even as small as and simple as like CLABSI rates or any line infection. you can tangibly take that and be able to kind of magnify that out over anybody's well-formed simulation program and development. And I think that's the nice piece, and what we're trying to really be able to push forward through accreditation is, if we have accredited programs doing this with the same set of standards, the same setup, we should in theory be able to help them make that jump to that final push. So to me, I think the educational piece will continue to grow and develop, and we've got a great foothold there. My hope for the next 10 years kind of parallels outside of the field to how do we convince and show the great data, the metrics, the impact that we know to the people that have no idea who we are, right? Like, it's almost like going to Shark Tank to be able to make sure people continue to support this, whether this is financially or whether it's through some of the governmental initiatives, and some of the pushes that we want to see continue to happen for integrating simulation into the curricular needs of different college programs.
Yeah. And I think it takes a really unique personality or viewpoint of it to see it in that way, because I have heard that more and more. Especially, I remember Lance Bailey was talking about this recently, but like, it does take that brain, because I know for your background, like, that is not your sweet spot at all in terms of being like, all right, let's think about this from a business side. And I don't think that that's often in terms of the healthcare side that they turn around and say, okay, let's look at this from that business angle, or let's look at that from, the ROI, things along those lines, right? But I do think the more now that we have different people and personalities coming into this space of simulation, they can see it from that viewpoint. And again, kind of that same advocacy of saying, hey, we've got to start really looking at what this means downstream to get the backing that it needs, because we hear it so often of people coming up and saying, oh, I got a grant for $1 million to get started, but I have no budget. I have no working budget. I have not, and so then they don't have the ability to continue or grow or,
Get
honestly, do good sim really at the end of the day. But I do think as that business side continues to develop, then there will be that opportunity for people who did just kind of get that one cash infusion to be able to advocate for what budget's going to look like going forward.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that too, Megan, because it really is right. Like, the last 10 years, or even the 10 years before that, this field was, driven by the clinicians, the people that were coming through, and they made incredible waves in founding this field. But it was, again, the kind of for us, by us there of what we know we need as an educator that has been set, and it's still growing, still developing. We have to be able to get outside of it. So how do we bring people in, whether that's through an operational lens or, there are a few clinicians out there that are amazing on the business side. I'm lucky to be able to work for one, in our executive director now, Dr. Tara Lemoyne, that's an amazing clinician and businesswoman. She's able to really think through all sides of it. Like, how do we continue to get out there? And I've learned a ton from her of how we move this forward. But we've got to be able to get out there, and so it's welcoming those people in that have that business background, the MBA. Like, where do we see that we can help teach them simulation, but they can teach us how to do a successful elevator pitch or a business approach to how we get this supported.
Yeah, I remember like having to write a strategic plan for the first time as we started Avkin, and I was so overwhelmed. Yeah. Now I could do it very easily, right? But I think that it's like, because as clinicians, we don't typically have the opportunity to take business classes or even think with that business mind, right? Yeah. That you really have to stretch yourself beyond that. So having people that have that expertise, that passion, that can do it for you and assist you in thinking through things is, again, a huge relief to me, at least personally. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jarrod, for joining us. I appreciate your time and all that you do to help simulation and move it forward. And again, I think really put a stake in the ground for the SimOps. I mean, there's so many amazing people that are part of that SimOps team, but all of the work that you're doing with SSH and the Accreditation Council, like, we appreciate all your time and energies to make simulation what it is today.
Absolutely. Well, thank y'all for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure to just be able to chat with you all and be real about simulation. So,
yeah, if we're ever in Memphis, we'll stop by and see you.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, hopefully soon.
Thanks.
Thank y'all.
Bye.
thank you, Jarrod, for everything you have shared today. Again, we really appreciate getting that unique perspective in terms of operations in the simulation world, but not just operations, honestly. I mean, he does it all, so we really can't limit him to operations because it is the full gamut in terms of what him and Jamie are doing there at CHIPS. And again, it's just, honestly, I think it's just so incredible and honestly unique, where I think that a lot of programs try to figure out how to bring all of these different people together and have it as a well-crafted dancer. Again, I kind of see it as like an orchestra, like having all of the different pieces playing to make it sound beautiful. And I don't think that's common. And I think that, again, it comes from a lot of healthy and mutual respect for one another, respecting differences, recognizing strengths, being able to kind of have everyone come together with that. But I do think that they are kind of a very unique sim center in terms of how well they work together with all of the different pieces and being able to kind of get that moving forward, orchestrated, and bringing in all of the voices to hear what they have to say.
Yeah, so speaking of voices, you recently had a LinkedIn post that went a little viral.
We're gonna go hot topics here. Hot topics in simulation. So
let's talk about it a little bit.
I honestly was not expecting this to be, I thought it was gonna be like 100 people were going to see this, and we were just kind of going to go on. Like, I did not think that this was going to be a big thing.
Why don't you explain what it was?
So what happened was, it was brought to my attention that it is becoming more common for the term human simulator to start to be referred to in replace of synchronized patient. I'm not sure where this transition started. I know that SSH came out with the term human simulation, which is kind of identifying, and ASPE.
Yeah, both.
Identifying that this is kind of the term for the modality. Because again, we've had a lot of conflict in terms of synchronized patient, simulated participant, simulated patient. Like, the gamut goes on and on and on. So I think that they were trying to come up with what is the overarching umbrella term that they can use for the modality of human simulation. So they came out with that. And then recently, there's been the term of, how do I recruit human simulators? How do I train human simulators? How do I schedule human simulators? And I think that this comes from a place of not working or being a synchronized patient. So I also feel like there's a gap right now in simulation where there's not a lot of people who have been the role of the synchronized patient that stay inside of sim. I feel like oftentimes they kind of move on, they go to the next thing, and they're not necessarily brought to the table as that respected voice to say, how would you like to be called, or what do you identify, like things like that. There's not the same sense of ownership.
Well, there's not even an association for standardized patients.
Exactly.
There's an association for standardized patient educators, but there's no association for standardized patients. So they really don't have a seat at the table in a way.
And oftentimes the educators have not done the standardized patient role for years, right? And so a lot of times they come in as the educator, but they haven't necessarily done it unless they're just like filling in. And I will say there's a very big difference between, as an educator, if you're filling in for sim versus like, this is your passion and this is what you do.
Well, it's also power dynamics differences as well, I would say.
Agreed. So I really wanted to kind of speak out as someone whose background is a standardized patient. Like, I identify much stronger with the term standardized patient than standardized patient educator. Like, I feel way more of like, I'm like, no, that was how I started. Those were my roots.
She'd actually pay money to be a standardized patient currently.
Please contact me. I would love to do some sim again. And honestly, can't even tell you how badly I would love to go back and do some sim.
She misses it very much.
But I really identify with that very strongly. So I wanted to put this out there on LinkedIn because I just wanted people to hear and understand that using the term human simulator, or referring to me as a human simulator, feels very degrading in terms of it being like, you are just a tool that I'm using. You are just here to lay in bed, read the lines I've told you to read, and do what I've told you to do, and thank you, you can go now. And that's all we need from you. And I want there to be an understanding that being a standardized patient is an art. There's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot that goes into preparing for it. And there is a level of respect, of understanding that I am trained. I know what I'm doing. I've worked at this. And again, I'm coming into it from a perspective of somebody who has strong talents and abilities in that area, and I'm going forward. And I just think that, again, when you start to dehumanize humans and kind of, again, classify it as they're a simulator or they're, a tool to be used, it really then starts to devalue what they're bringing to the table. And I just wanted to make sure that that was known from a perspective of the synchronized patient, because I don't think that we often hear from them, nor do I think that a synchronized patient is often in the role long enough for them to have strong opinions. But as someone who's gone around, gone to conferences, done workshops, done speaking engagements, done consulting, I really have seen the full gamut of what it is, and I do think that it is important to have that voice represented in terms of that. Now, I do want to specify, because there were some just questions in terms of this, but I'm not saying that the standardized patient is more important than the educator. I'm not saying that the standardized patient should be treated as an all-knowing person and they don't need coaching, but like we discussed even in this episode with Jarrod, there is a healthy dynamic of respecting what the standardized patient role is, respecting what the educator's role is, and if there is a healthy dynamic between the two, there's a mutual respect of who takes over when and where, and making sure that it's accurate. And I will say that a lot of times, I am going to go on a little bit on a soapbox here, but in terms of the earpieces and things like that, I do feel like because that is so integrated, I feel like there is a concept that it's like, you're a warm body in bed and I'm going to speak through your mouth and you don't get to take it on and kind of do it yourself. And I think that, again, what happens there is it's a lack of training that then occurs because they're relying on earpieces and things along those lines, rather than training up the standardized patient to go into that simulation and trust them not to go rogue in the simulation experience.
Yeah, well, I will say, I mean, from working with at least hundreds of standardized patients, if not thousands of standardized patients, because we had new standardized patients every semester, and we had about 30 of them, that it is a matter of setting boundaries, right? And so there is ways to do it. I promise it is not that you have, again, if you have rogue SPs and you've tried to train them and they're not trainable, then
they should be fired. Yes,
you need to let them move on because they're not doing their role.
Exactly.
But I do think it's the comments that you made on that LinkedIn post are really important for people to consider, because it is dehumanizing. And the issue that I've always had with the mannequins is that they aren't humans, right? So we want the humanity is what you want to bring out in the simulations, because people are so complex and you're meeting people in healthcare at the worst days of their lives. Yeah. And so having SPs help the students to understand that in a safe environment and get feedback, again, not more important than the education that goes into it by any means, but they are a part of the education. They should contribute to the questions that they should be allowed to ask questions of the character and who they are, because it's going to make for a better simulation in the long run. Yeah. So again, I know you weren't anticipating it to go viral, but I do think that voice, the seat at the table or voice to be heard is really important for people to be considering.
And I will say that I really did appreciate the openness to hear the perspective. And again, it did really encourage me in the fact that people were saying like, oh, I never thought of this before. I've never considered this before. And I do think that that's really telling of our industry, that people are not pushing back and saying, oh, well, what about, I think that a lot of people are saying, oh, okay, that's the perspective of the standardized patient. I'm not trying to insinuate harm, or I'm not trying to insinuate disrespect or whatever it is. And so thank you for that perspective, and we can move on. But I think that there is that element of, again, similar to what we talked about here, but an openness to understanding all perspectives and going forward. And again, as long as there's that healthy respect and understanding of all areas and who contributes to simulation, I think we're on a really good path in terms of where the industry can go to.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what we talked about with Jarrod.
I know. It all ties back, right? It all ties in, so that's absolutely great. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. It's been great chatting with you, and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye-bye.